friends, thank you for joining me today. This is my wrap up for the books that I read in May of 2026, and as per usual I like to do a Fae May theme, so a lot of the books that I read have some element of fae or fairies to them, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I got through a lot of books, and actually most of them were read via either audiobook or Kindle, so I only have a couple of books to actually hold up for you today. So let's go ahead and get started. 10,000 Stitches by Olivia Atwater. This is a historical fantasy romance about a housemaid named Euphemia who goes by Effie, and she works hard and is treated very poorly by her employer, but one day she has an encounter with the brother of the lord of the house named Benedict, and he makes her feel like an actual person and not just a piece of furniture, and she immediately falls for him. And shortly after that, Effie is discovered by a fairy named Lord Blackthorn, who insists on helping Effie find a way to marry Benedict in exchange for sewing 10,000 stitches onto his jacket because she is a talented sewer. And that kicks off her trials and tribulations. Things do not go as smoothly as hoped, and make fairy bargains at your own risk, And this was a 4.5 star. Really had a fun time with it. This made me grin and chuckle. I love Regency era inspired fantasy, historical fantasy. I love the kind of fae that are, bewitching but also kind of terrifying and sinister on the other hand, and this has great humor, great characters. It's a Cinderella-esque story, but with morals kind of for the modern day, and in particular it's kind of about how anger isn't always a bad negative emotion, and sometimes anger can be a force for good and for positive change. I really enjoyed the development of the romance. It went a way that, I didn't expect for some reason. I don't know, I might just be dumb, but I just didn't expect it to go the way that it went. I just thought it was delightful. This was a great kickoff to Fae May, and this is actually the second book in a trilogy, which is the Regency fairy tale series. And the first book, which you may have heard of, is Half a Soul, which I also loved. But all three of these, they're interconnected standalones, but you don't need to have read the first book at all to read this and enjoy it, but I would still highly recommend both because they're both great. The Bone Maker by Sarah Beth Durst, narrated by Sonila Nankani. This is an adult standalone fantasy about this group of heroes who, about 25 years ago, defeated a great evil in the Bone War. And the leader of that team, named Kriya, has been trying to find a way to bring back her slain husband from the dead ever since. He was part of their team and was killed in the final battle. And in the process of trying to do this, she ends up slowly getting the old team back together, and they discover that maybe the evil that they thought they had destroyed isn't gone after all. And this was 4 stars. It was, something about it was kind of refreshing. It just felt kind of unique. The setting is very vivid and really cool. It's like in this mountain range with cities connected by like cable cars, I think, versus like being like within a mountain. They're like outside of the mountain. There are these misty valleys that are full of monsters. The bone magic is really cool, and the main characters have to be in their 40s, if not their 50s potentially. Their ages aren't explicitly said on screen, but it's been 25 years since they won this war, and I'd imagine that they were probably in their early 20s, you know, at their youngest and at their peak. So it was just kind of cool to have older heroes. There's a lot of interpersonal drama dealing with the aftermath of this war and how it affected each of them and what each of them kind of did after it was over. And there are these reconciliations that happen. They often are having to use their heads rather than just brute force to address this new threat. But there's humor at times in this, especially from a character named Zira, who was my favorite. She was pretty sick. But there's also there's a lot of loss and grief and just kind of the price of saving the ones that you love. And I don't know, I thought that this was just a solid read. Even if, in my opinion, the resolution of the final conflict felt a little bit optimistic. I don't know, I'm not sure that that's what's most likely to happen if it were actually to happen, but it was a happy ending. You know, it didn't quite cross into 5-star territory of me loving it, but I definitely enjoyed it. It was a good read, and I think that this could be a good one if you want to read a fantasy with older main characters and that doesn't include the establishing of a romance as part of the story, because the romance that happened between Kriya and her husband, they have been married, so the romance is established. So that was also kind of a nice change of pace. Road of the Lost by Nafiza Azad. This is a YA fantasy about a teenage girl named Croy who is a fae creature called a brownie. But it turns out that she isn't actually a brownie. She has just been glamored to look like a brownie for the past 17 years. And she is something else unknown to her. And she is being magically compelled, summoned to the world of the Fae by someone whose identity she doesn't know. And she begins this journey to discover what she really is and who's calling her. This was a 3.5 star. This was kind of a weird book. I don't know, Croy isn't your typical protagonist, which on one hand makes sense because she's fae, so she's not human, but I don't know, the way that she behaved was a little inconsistent and strange. Even though she does go through a lot of transformation throughout the book, both physically and mentally, as this glamour breaks, and she learns a lot of tough things, and she meets a lot of other fae characters along the way, and there's this mystery about the current fae monarch who many think doesn't deserve the throne. The magic of the otherworld is in danger of disappearing. So there are a few things going on in this that aren't necessarily complicated, but I still found it kind of hard to keep track of things, and the way that characters behaved were just a little strange. So I don't know, it was a unique read with some really cool creatures and magic, but I don't know that I particularly loved Croy. I don't know, she isn't a goody two-shoes good-hearted protagonist necessarily. She has a rage inside her that is not toned down by the author by the end. So on one hand, I can appreciate that, that's different, but I think I found Croy more confusing than anything. Wormwood Summer by Kai Butler, narrated by Greg Tremblay. This is a contemporary paranormal urban fantasy that takes place in the fictional city of San Amaro in California, and the main character, Parker, is a paranormal private investigator, and he gets tasked by the Fae Summer Queen, to whom he owes a debt, to find a missing girl for her. And he also gets pulled into investigating the death of various magic users in the city, alongside a handsome detective named Nick. And this was also a 3.5 star. I'm a little picky when it comes to urban fantasy, and this kind of urban fantasy isn't really my thing. but I think that for what it was perfectly fine. Good even. It was light, it was a quick read, had some kind of quippy characters, and alongside humans there are, werewolves, vampires, demons, fae, and then like people who use magic like witches. So like I'd say, in my opinion, it's pretty standard paranormal fare in that regard. But one thing that's annoying is that apparently there are 2 prequel novellas to this book that are apparently kind of crucial to some of the relationships that you see in this book, including the romance between Parker and Nick. I didn't know about the novellas, and I don't think that you should have to read prequels to get the full payoff in this book, in this first book in the series. The romance between them feels very abrupt and insta-love because you don't have that backstory. But there were some cool things as well. I liked a lot of the Fae related stuff and magic, and the stuff around this arbiter type role called the Wind Rose, and I thought that was really interesting. So it was a quick and easy read. I listened to this on audiobook. The narrator was good, so it wasn't a bad read, but I don't think I'm invested enough to continue the series. Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. This is a romance novella about these 2 lead designers at 2 rival indie game studios. And the studio employees are sent on this retreat together in hopes that they can find a way to reconcile and get along in order to work together on developing this sequel game. And this was a book club pick, so I know that I am not the target audience necessarily, even though I am a gamer, and this was like a 3-star. A very just kind of indifferent, fine 3-star. I'd say if you want a simple, fluffy romance with nothing like too heavy or serious, something predictable and comfortable, you'll probably really enjoy this. Ali Hazelwood is not a gamer. She said that in an interview I found online, and I think that you can kind of tell. The dialogue about games was, I guess, just plausible enough, but still felt a little stilted at times. The miscommunication that was prolonged really annoyed me until it was cleared up, and then shortly after there's just like a bunch of sex scenes all in a row that I was just neutral towards. They were fine, they just kept coming. So I don't know, I don't really have much more to say about this. It did nothing noteworthy in my opinion, but if you're looking for just a cozy little romance in a wintry setting, then this could be for you. House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas. I listened to the graphic audio version, which has a huge cast, and this is the 3rd and most current book in her urban fantasy series, Crescent City, which follows a half fae named Bryce and a bunch of her friends as they're trying to find a way to basically overthrow the cruel overlords of their world, basically. There is more going on, but saying too much would be spoilers. This is the 3rd book in the series, and I don't know, this was like 4-star, I guess, 3 point something. I enjoyed this more than the previous book, which was a nice surprise, at least. Bryce is kind of annoying though. You learn a lot of things in this book, almost overwhelmingly so, just a lot of stuff going on. And there's crossover with the author's other series, A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is really the only reason that I continued past the first book of Crescent City. This book had moments where I was pulled in. Some characters I really like. It was fine. It was good. It was fine. It was Sarah J. Maas. I don't know, like a lukewarm 4. I don't know. Not much else to say because I don't really care about this series. I'm hoping there are no more crossovers that require me to return to it, because I only did it because I do plan to continue A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I am finally caught up on Sarah J. Maas as of, June of 2026. How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie, narrated by Charlie Clive and Paul Panting. This is following a 20-something girl named Grace who is writing about her exploits killing off the members of her family while she is in prison for a crime that she didn't commit. So Grace is her father's illegitimate child, whom he wanted nothing to do with. He is very rich and well off, and he left her and her mother behind in poverty, like before she was even born. And her mom dies from cancer, with no assistance pointedly no assistance from her very rich father. So Grace decides to dedicate her life to killing him and his family in revenge. And this was a 3-star. It sounded like a fun time, you know, a good for her story, and the actual murders were pretty engaging, but, I don't know, I hate to say it, but Grace was not a very fun or enjoyable character to read about. For me. Not all main characters have to be likable. I've read books I've enjoyed with unlikable main characters, but Grace was just like mean and hates everyone and everything. She always has something shitty and snarky to say, just putting down other women and men. And like one of the first things that she says at the start of the book is that like old people are a waste of space, and it was just a lot of spite that wasn't always clever or insightful, and I don't think it was always aimed in the right direction. And the pacing was also slow when people weren't imminently about to be murdered, so like it was just okay. It had entertaining moments, and if you really love unlikable or hateable main characters, then you may like this more than I did. And the final thing that I read in May, going back to our Fae May theme, was Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. This is the second book in her historical fantasy series, and it follows Professor Emily Wilde, who is a scholar of fairy. And similar to the first book, in this one she goes on a bit of an adventure while doing research on aspects of the Fae, specifically looking for fairy doors, which connect our world and fairy. And she is also, of course, wrestling with some romantic feelings for her colleague Wendell, who has connections to fairy. And this was a 4.5 star. It has the things that I loved from the first book, you know, a humorous tone, charming characters, really cool, you know, traditional trickster, monstrous fae, footnotes, moments of action amidst moments of scholarship and research into the fae. I do think that there was a bit of a detrimental lack of Wendell being involved in this story. There's a reason for it, but he and Emily didn't play off each other in the way that they did in book 1, which I think would have made their developing relationship feel a little more genuine, especially in this book, in this moment between the two of them. It's an important moment that kind of gets glossed over. But I still really enjoyed this. Still 4.5 star. Love the writing and the characters and the cozy vibes, and you know, I think these books are a great length. They're not too long, not too short, and I'm looking forward to the third book. And we just learned recently that there will be a fourth book coming out next year, so that's exciting. So that's everything that I read in the month of May. I followed the Fae May theme pretty good. Ended up listening to, again, a lot of audiobooks and checking out digital books, except for Road of the Lost, which I actually did check out physically from the library, which is fun. I don't do that very often. I usually use my library for audiobooks and digital books. And let's see, so it is the middle of June, Pride Month, and I like to read a lot of queer LGBTQ books this month, and I've read a lot of queer horror and post-apocalyptic stuff, so that's been both fun but also a little bit heavy. So I think I'm trying to read a couple lighter, more fun things. I just finished reading The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune, which was very cozy, very cute, and reminded me very much of The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. Very similar vibe, messages, tone. And at the moment, I'm almost done listening to The Honey Witch by Sydney Shields, I think, and that's been really cute. It's about a girl who decides to become a honey witch after her grandmother, but as a result of this curse, once she becomes a witch, she can't really find true love because people cannot fall in love with her. So she, of course, meets this girl that she starts to have feelings for, and that complicates things, and it's been very cute. I've been enjoying it so far. And I think I will be starting a book by Kaylin Bayron, who I've read several books from before, and it's like I think it's supposed to be kind of, a fun summer slasher called You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight. It's very short, and I think that should be kind of a fun summertime slasher. So yeah, I hope that you've been having a good, it's not summer yet. I was gonna say a good summer, but summer has literally not started yet. So I hope that your spring has been good and that you've been reading some nice books, and hope that if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, the sunshine has been helping you feel a little better. I know that I always soak up the sun and the light. We're nearing the start of summer soon, so that'll be fun. But anyway, I hope that you have read some good books recently. I hope you're enjoying what you're reading now, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!